Welcome to The Reins of Leadership, the podcast dedicated to helping you lead with presence and influence with trust. I'm your host, Merinda Smith, business leadership strategist, sharing actionable insights on mindset, EQ and energy uniquely illuminated by wisdom gained alongside my equine partners. This episode has taken me a while to record because it was so hard for me at the time. This episode is about death and how death has a way of stopping us. How it brings everything into sharp focus. What mattered, what didn't, what remains when we're gone. And though we rarely talk about it, death isn't the opposite of life. It's part of it. And so I want to explore what it means to live and lead in a way that leaves something real behind. Not just results, but resonance. And that's what the episode is about today. It's about the legacy that we leave behind when we are in this life, before death becomes us. Before I start, I'd like to share with you what recently happened in our paddock. And Paddy, our dear old donkey, he had lived an amazing life. He'd been with two owners, myself being the second owner. And he was in his late 20s, we would say early 30s. And he was a beautiful, wise soul. So Paddy, you may have heard of me talking about in other episodes. And he was just divine. He shared with me so much about what a donkey is and so much about life. He's helped and supported students that have come to our property, and we've been doing equine assisted facilitation. And he has been that wise soul who's helped so many people. The other day I came home from being out at a client's, and the young ponies who were next to the paddock where I had put Paddy. Now I must go back a step. So a few days earlier I'd seen that Paddy was getting old. For probably 12 months. I'd seen that he was looking old and he was aging rapidly. So for about a week prior to this day, I put him in a paddock alongside the young babies. He was by himself, but he seemed to want to be by himself. And so it was a lovely, it's got beautiful trees, it's got a creek going through it, it's a beautiful paddock. And he seemed to be happy to go in there. So I'd been watching him every day. Anyway, this particular day came along. I'd been out at a client, so it was late in the afternoon, early evening, and the young ponies came galloping up to the fence. Now, sometimes they do that, sometimes they don't, but they kept galloping and they wanted my attention. So I went, okay, I'll just go check on Paddy, and I walked down into his paddock. And the ponies actually galloped with me. They were galloping round and round, but they were sort of like leading me to where he was. And I knew instinctively where to go. This paddock is probably 10, 12 acres, and it's full of creeks and trees, and it's very winding, and he could have been anywhere. But I knew exactly where to go, and there he was lying under a tree very peacefully. And he had died. And I was just in shock because, it's I wasn't expecting it, even though subconsciously I might have been. Yet the ponies kept galloping around and around. So I thought, what I'm going to do is let them into his paddock. And as soon as I opened the gate for them to come into the paddock, they just quietly walked in and walked exactly to where he was. There was no panic, no drama. And they just stood close in stillness. And one by one, they came close up to him and they sniffed him and they stood. And yes, I could see the grief. And yes, I could also see that peace, that love, that honouring of the soul that he had been. And for me to be part of that was just so honouring. I totally felt the love that they were offering. And when they were done, they just walked off and they started eating. And what I thought was they understand what we forget, that endings are sacred, that presence, even in loss, is its own kind of leadership. So I'm not going to hang on and ruminate about death. I really want to talk about the legacy that we leave in leaders. We often think of legacy as what we build or achieve. It's tempting to count upwards our awards, our promotions, or tangible milestones as proof of a life well led. Yet true legacy isn't just measured in projects completed or titles earned or qualifications achieved. Legacy is, at its core, how people feel when they think of you. It's the atmosphere you leave behind in a room after you depart. The warmth, the inspiration, the encouragement, or maybe even the challenge you've posed. Legacy shows up in the confidence you nurture in others, in the courage you sparked when someone needed it most, in that gentle push you gave at the right moment. It lives on in the stories people tell when I know I'm often in boardrooms where people are saying, "Oh, David shared this with me," or "Jenny shared this, and it made me feel like this." That is the legacy that's woven through our memories. A kind word, a hard truth, delivered with compassion. A celebration of someone else's triumph. You can often remember one of your teachers from school, the legacy they left with you, whether it was positive or negative. And sometimes people might not recall the exact words that you used, but they'll remember how you made them feel. They recount the moments when they discovered new strengths in themselves because of your belief in them. And I remember many years ago, one of my trainers, so I was upskilling myself, and I was on this 5-day, can't remember what it was called, but it was like this ripping out of my insides and my brain and turning it round and mashing it and then allowing me to come out the other side. So it was just this leadership 5-day intensive. And one of the things that we had to do was we had to imagine ourselves on our deathbed, or at our funeral, I think it was actually. And we were a third party and we were looking down and we were listening to what people said about us. And the purpose of the exercise was to think about the legacy that we have built and we've achieved, and how people feel when they think of you. So it's not what you're leaving behind. It is. It's thinking about right now what you leave behind in a room, the tone, the feeling, the courage you sparked in someone else, the stories that people will tell when your name is spoken. That is what a legacy is about. And I remember when I was doing that exercise, I went, I don't think I want to have those people talking about that. So that was a big turning point in my life, and for me to change the way that I act and to become really mindful of who I am. And sometimes when we think about that death, it can be a gentle inventory. What am I holding on to that no longer matters? What can I remove? As one of my guests said to me, it's like at the beginning of the year when you got a Rolodex and you're looking at your friends. She was talking about your friends and looking at, the names on the Rolodex, that old-fashioned way that we used to write people's names and telephone numbers on. And just saying, well, who can we leave behind? But this time it's not about that. It's about what we can leave behind, what no longer matters for us. And when we pause to take that inventory of grudges, of guilt, or endless striving, we make space for what does matter. And maybe this is the real art of living. It's in the learning to let go gracefully long before the end, so that we can make those changes to become aware of that ending, so we can live as though time is precious and we can lead differently. Then we will listen more. We will love better. We will soften our urgency and strengthen our presence. So the awareness of death isn't morbid. It's clarifying. It helps us to see that the legacy we're building is already happening right now. So let me ask you to take a reflective moment. Take a breath and think of someone you've lost, or someone who's changed you simply by being who they were. What did they leave behind in you? I know there might be an ache for some of you, yet some of you might be seeing a happiness, a contentment, or something that they've taught you to do. Something that they've pointed out in you that you were able to change for the better. That's legacy. So gently ask yourself, what am I leaving behind in others today as you go about your day? And how do I want to be remembered? Not someday, but now, in this moment, by how you show up. So death reminds us to live more truthfully, to love without delay, to release what doesn't matter and pour ourselves into what does. Leadership is about guiding others while we're here, and it's about leaving behind a trace of kindness, of courage and authenticity that continues to lead long after you've left that space. So to recap, legacy isn't just about the outward results or the accolades we collect throughout life. It's the lasting feeling, the invisible mark, the spark we leave in others, the way our presence ripples out long after we're gone. It's in the stories told, the courage inspired, and the encouragement created. And sometimes it's the reality of death that brings legacy into its sharpest focus. When we lose someone, even if it's beautiful Paddy the donkey, we don't reminisce about what he's done, his resume. We remember how he made us feel. Or if it's a human, we remember their laughter, their listening ear, the way they made us feel valued or brave. We tell stories of moments that mattered and those encouragement that shaped our journeys. So as leaders, as humans, death offers the ultimate clarity. It gently urges us to live each day with intention, knowing that our legacy is being written in every interaction, every moment of kindness, and every leap of faith that we inspire in someone else. So take a moment to breathe in this truth. Everything ends, and that's what makes every moment sacred. Thanks for joining me on the Reins of Leadership. Remember to lead with presence and influence with trust. Subscribe for more insights and find resources at merindasmith.podia.com.